Hi, I'm Emily Vale, and welcome to Behind the Bookshelf. Today, I'm joined by Christopher Ruiz, author of The Wishing Well, a short story horror collection. He's a fiction writer based in Central Illinois and an enthusiast of the macabre. As a combat veteran and former crisis responder for a psychiatric residential treatment facility, Christopher approaches his craft with a distinctive lens, exploring the darker facets of human experience. Hi, Chris. I'm glad to have you here today, so welcome.
Well, Miss Vale, a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, of course. So you came out with a short story collection recently, and it's totally up my alley. So I'm eager to hear about it. Can you give us a brief introduction into The Wishing Well?
Of course, yeah. So The Wishing Well is a collection of nine loosely interconnected short stories. They're horror shorts. Each is centered around a bar called The Wishing Well, in which ill-fated wishes are granted for, for certain patrons, but for the protagonist of each story. They're a mix of creature features, psychological, demonic, religious horrors. Not extreme, not splatterpunk. Um, but a mix of horror shorts anyway.
Yeah, that's really intriguing. So I want to ask, how did that kind of idea come to you? What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so I had a few different inspirations. Obviously, with nine different stories, there are kind of nine different things to pull from. Um, I I started writing a lot of these stories back in 2012, and so I've had a long time anyway getting into the publication of some of these stories. But the majority of them written about 2012, and that was when I got back from a 1 year tour in Iraq. Um, I had at that point some experiences that I had. The vet center recommending that I try to write some things out, and the more and more I started writing, I guess what you would consider creative nonfiction to try to process some things. The more and more I got into writing fiction again, something that I used to do in childhood. I did a lot in my adolescence. Um, and so it just kind of transitioned anyway, from some nonfiction to fiction. And the more and more I got into it, the more and more these stories, these nine stories developed.
Cool. So would you say that you have always been like a lover of the horror genre, but going through those experiences that you did and learning that writing horror particularly was a way to kind of navigate some of those things that you had. Did it come after that, or it always has been with you?
It's been with me a long time. So, really, for as long as I've had nightmares, I'd say I've been drawn to horror. From my younger childhood days of reading Goosebumps and scary stories to tell in the dark or whatever else I could find in the school library. Um, I continued to immerse myself in horror literature growing up. But beyond that, I feel the horror genre works well, really just in my personal experiences, I guess, that I draw from in my writing. So the time that I spent in the military, I also spent about 7.5 years working at a psych facility for adolescents. I actually lived on site as a crisis responder, um, and so I had really a lot to work with in terms of personal experiences with drawing from anyway psychological narratives there.
Mhm.
But it's something that's really stuck with me for a long time. Again, as young as I can remember.
Yeah, and it definitely sounds like it's something that I love about horror is that it is reflective, of course, of like real life situations. And of course, you can make them more like speculative or fantastical, but it's one of those things that it is healing and it allows you to talk about things that you necessarily can't talk about. And you sound like you've lived that. So I can only imagine the types of stories that you write and the topics that you're able to touch on.
Yeah, well, I mean, gosh, I've got really a lot of material to work with.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of stories that are half written or jotted down, or something I used to do was that I still do actually uh, is write down my the nightmares that I
Mhm.
have. I used to have these sleep paralysis episodes for years, and then just night terrors. But I got into as I would wake up from them or regain physical control of my body from the sleep paralysis, I try to write my experiences. And oftentimes in the morning, when I go to reread it, I, if I remembered it, but as I was rereading it, sometimes I just couldn't make any sense of what I was talking about. Just
Yeah.
I'm, I'm sure you may have been there where you're trying to recount a dream to somebody else and then realize how idiotic you sound. How,
Yeah.
it just you can't even it's incomprehensible at times. But that's something that I used to do more frequently. I don't get those night terrors or anything as much here in my adulthood. Um, but so I have plenty of material to work with moving forward. This is the first volume for the Wishing Well. I have, gosh, I probably got enough to work with for even a third volume, but for sure there's going to be a second volume. For now,
Yeah.
though, I'm working on a novel. So that I hope to have um, probably in the ARC campaign phase here by fall or winter. But it's
Mhm.
been a little slow going with writing this novel.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that because I was gonna ask you about that. I noticed on the front of the cover of Wishing Well, it said that it was volume 1, so I'm happy to see that there's a volume 2, and you said maybe this fall?
Well, for the novel, for the novel I'm working on, as far as the second volume for the Wishing Well, that might be a couple more years out.
Gotcha.
The reason I say that is that shorts are great. I love shorts. I love writing them. I actually prefer writing those over so far anyway over over novel writing. But
Yeah.
it's difficult to market a short story collection, especially as a newbie indie author. And so I think probably for at least this and next year, I need to focus on novel writing. So if I can, I'm going to try and get these two novels published. This first one self-published, and I will be potentially pitching the second novel here if I can get the manuscript
Yeah.
tightened up in time at StokerCon. Maybe and see about doing some pitch panels over there.
Yeah, I can totally relate with what you're saying about there being a difference between a novel and then short stories. I do also prefer writing short stories because I feel like they're a nice distraction, especially because writing a novel, it is so just like you're here, you got to sit through it and get it done. And a short story is like you could write one in a day. And
Yeah.
so they are quite fun. I've been working on one myself.
Oh,
Um,
good.
so I want to talk about the wishing well, the connection between the nine stories, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the connection between the nine stories, it's said to be an ever shifting, unearthly bar where desires are commodities and the price is everything. With that being said, what did it just happen that way, or what made you choose to write around the subject of desire, so to speak?
Yeah. So desire is very human, and that's one of the biggest draws for me here. Having some unmet need, feeling like you aren't quite whole, being motivated to do things out of the ordinary to achieve your desires is it's all pretty relatable. It's very human, and I feel like gives great depth to the characters that I write. I feel it gives me a lot to play with in the horror genre. Wish has gone wrong. I mean, it's an oldie. It's great. It's tried and true. I mean, you have the monkey's paw. You've got needful things. You have I think there's all kinds of very prominent horror that touches on Wish has gone wrong.
Yeah, I would certainly agree because I feel like even though desire, it's very like pointed. it can be so many things and it can reveal so much about a person. You mentioned Monkey's Paw Obsession, which is a crazy, like, successful hit recently.
Oh yeah.
That's very much kind of an inspired from Monkey's Paw in a way. It works around a similar theme. So I do agree with you. It's definitely tried and true, and there's a lot to be said there. So I'm looking really forward to reading this collection. I've been very much in like a collection phase.
I appreciate it. I honestly, I've consumed um, so many anthologies and collections myself. I actually, growing up, I did prefer shorts over long form
Mhm.
as a reader. But yeah, I've gone in and out of phases, just like you said. I mean, I think it is kind of a phase thing.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it as a writer, writing shorter format stories versus full-length novels. I would like to hear about like do you enjoy writing the shorter format stories and why or vice versa?
Yeah, I do. I so the gosh, the shorts are for me something that I can. You talked about whipping one out in a day. That's
Yeah.
something I can do. I don't know what it is about shorts. I just I love writing them. I love reading them. I like the challenge. I think honestly, I think longer works allow for more flexibility. But short form really requires a butcher's mindset, and that's not for everyone.
Uh-huh.
For some reason I don't yet understand. I can just fly through writing a short story, and I have no qualms about gutting them, or even just totally starting over. Um, and that just hasn't yet proven to be the case with novel writing for me. Here I am, roughly, what is this, June, end of June, so 7 months into this novel, and I feel I'm barely halfway there. I can't stop editing while I write. Um, and I think I'm treating some chapters as short stories themselves rather than as individual chapters of one big story, if that makes sense. So I just keep falling back into those short story
Yeah.
writing habits.
Yeah, especially when you've been processing a lot of it. I mean, they're 2 different beasts, of course, and I think it does take time to kind of, like, retrain your head space a little bit, but it's cool to see that you're doing both. I appreciate that. So, I'm gonna ask, what would you say has been one of your most influential pieces of horror fiction? And this can go across multiple pieces of media, film, books, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So I had already brought it up, but if we're looking specifically at like my published work, The Wishing Well, and I've had some other shorts that have been picked up by indie presses just for small zines and anthologies. But um, I'd have to say Stephen King's Needful Things for The Wishing Well. It's in Needful Things. It's a book, and it also had a movie adaptation, which made some changes from the book. But the book is great. Stephen King really does small towns and multiple characters very well, or small town characters too. Just great depth and everything. But in this story, you have this devilish outsider, we'll call him, who moves into this small town, and he sets up this curiosity shop, and it holds some of the most desirable items of each of the residents in the town. And so when these residents shop there, in addition to a small cash payment, each customer must conduct some kind of mischief or prank on another resident, and then this all just kind of escalates until well, the town destroys itself. But you know, I don't go that far in my stories, at least not yet. Each of my characters is driven by want, um, but generally they destroy themselves in the process of getting what they wished for.
Mhm. Yeah, I've seen that archetype, of that story before. You mentioned the curiosity shop, this devil of a person. I have not read the book, but, yeah, I've just seen that archetype. I think there was an episode of Supernatural that had, like, something similar, and I'm
Sure.
sure they were directly inspired by that. So I'll have to look into that. That's a nice recommendation.
For sure, yeah, it's a great one. I love the character work that he does in Needful Things. Uh, Gosh, I want to say it was probably, uh, I think I consumed that one a whole weekend. I
Mhm.
couldn't put it down.
So we've talked a little bit about the connection between the stories being at this bar. So are all of the stories they're a different patron, you said, correct?
Yes. Yep. So
Cool.
I have just looking at the first couple of stories. The first story is called "The Captive." That is about a man who feels like he is shackled by his own life, the decisions that he's made, the situation in which he's in, his marriage, his fatherhood, his alcoholism, and so uh, he in this tale wants to free himself, and so he um, spends many nights sitting across the street from the wishing well from this bar and just observing it and wanting to go in but knowing that he can't, and then talking himself into going into the bar and giving himself these last chances to leave or to not enter or to not pick up the drink, and he eventually gets pulled in the second story. We have it's called The Substitute. We have kind of the other side of the coin. In the first tale, the captive, the protagonist, he is maybe a perpetrator of abuse, we can call it. In the second story, we have the recipient of abuse. It's told from the perspective of a child um, whose mother had passed away and a year prior, and he just wants to be happy again. He wants everybody to be happy. He wants his father to be happy, and so that's his wish is for happiness. And he goes to school that day and finds he has a substitute teacher. Mrs. Smiles is how she goes by. And so she tries to engage in this rhyming game with the students and is trying to encourage good behavior through playing this game. And for the students who act out or at least don't play the game that she's wanting, she takes them to this closet at the back of the classroom where the children seemingly disappear. And so this sense of dread is building for the child. It's told from the child's perspective. All the stories are in first person narrative, but the in this story, the language, the vocabulary, everything is um, reflective of a young child. And the story, as the child starts to break from reality, the story structure, the word structure, and everything seems to change to more of almost like a child's fairy tale in
Mhm.
rhyming narrative. Towards so like the last third of the book, or sorry, third of the story is told from that perspective. And then I have multiple other stories. The lake, about a group of friends who go out to a remote lake where someone jumps into the water from the boat and does not reemerge, and now the rest of the characters are trying to figure out they're stranded on this boat in the middle of this lake, trying to figure out how to get back to shore, survive. Um, and I have a Christmas Tale one about something that's not quite Santa. I have another one about a remote cabin in the winter wilderness. Um, and I have some that are a little bit more with the characters are maybe a little bit more reflective of me. I
Mhm.
have one called The Spectator that involves a combat veteran who is um, struggling with some depressive symptoms and is going through some prolonged exposure therapy. Um, so I have a wide cast, just a lot of different characters in this one.
Yeah, I like how diverse they are because that to me is very reflective of the people in a bar. You don't know who you're sitting next to. You don't know their story or why they're here, but you're all here for potentially a similar reason. So, um, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
So, what should we expect to see from you in the future? I know you've mentioned the novels a little bit. Can you tell us something without maybe telling us too much?
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, as slow as things have been, I do still intend to have this novel at least in the beta reading phase by fall. It's currently titled "In the Mountains, the Woods." I plan on a lengthy ARC campaign for this one. That's an advanced reader copy campaign, and I'm going to be looking at probably 5 to 6 months for the ARC before release. I really want to give this one a better pre-release marketing shot than I did the Wishing Well. I'm learning as an indie author, so
Aren't we all? Yeah.
for sure. Um, so when that's finally out with ARC readers, I'll be working on a second novel, which already has some brief outlines, but I'm not much of a planner as a writer. Obviously, that's probably more just being a short form writer. I mean, you can't really plan and outline a short story, right? You just write it. So
Yeah.
it's always been my writing style. But depending on the success of those two novels, I'll probably move back into short stories for a little while, and that'll be the period of time when I'll have the second volume of The Wishing Well in the works.
Cool. So we'll be expecting a novel and then the second volume.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
exciting.
sorry. And without spoiling, so in the too much, in the mountains, the woods is focused actually on another combat veteran, and this is a gal who she and her dog are being hunted by a group of men in the mountain woods. And while they're being hunted by this group of men, there is a third presence in the woods, uh, a presence that kind of lurks and watches from the shadows, so to speak.
Cool. Very interesting. I love your kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just the tone of your stories. They feel very eerie, and they're dark fiction, but they don't feel too dark yeah, at all.
Yeah, I know a lot of the perception of horror is that it focuses on gore, or really. I think people look at splatterpunk or extreme horror, or even horror, other types of horror media, films. You have like what is it, the Terrifier series, or
Mhm.
things that might come across a little bit more torturous and gore for the sake of gore and shock value than anything else. But horror really has some fantastic opportunities to explore things in life that generally aren't explored or discussed in Western culture. Grief and death, psychological, mental health issues. These are great areas of discussion in horror that you don't see too much of outside of the horror genre, and I think it really gives us an opportunity to see the parts of humanity that is very real. Um, that you know they just isn't discussed, and I think that some of the best fiction out there is the fiction that has the more truth and reality in it. And so horror, I think, really provides a lot of opportunity for some. I know it's fiction, but there's a lot of truth in horror.
Mhm.
It's just disguised as a monster, or maybe
Yeah.
something supernatural or something else, right?
Yeah, that's very well put. Like you said, grief and depression, like those are or loss. So those are all things that everyone deals with. Yet sometimes we shy away from those feelings. I love horror for that same reason, and I love when horror writers kind of use it to that way rather than to just shock. It can indulge people in different ways. Yeah.
For
So I
sure,
love the.
and it's the beauty of art in general is the individual responses uh, to, well, in any piece of the media, right? Be it film or literature or whatever. Um, but yeah, horror has been, gosh, they've been making some big waves recently in all different formats. A horror novelist just won the Pulitzer recently. We have. You mentioned Obsession and how well that was doing in the box office. Um, maybe beating out, I think it was Obsession that beat out The Mandalorian, right, for the in the box office. I think it was. Um, we finally got awards. Sinners brought all kinds of award nominations and wins. It's horror fans have been feasting pretty well lately, I think.
Yeah, and it's proof that there's a taste for it, certainly.
Yeah.
This is a question that I didn't send to you, but you could I easily answer just like where our conversation is going. And it was a question that someone had posed to me recently. Is there something that comes to mind that you would like to see more of in horror, or are you satisfied with the direction that it's going right now?
Well, I love experimentation, and I think we're seeing a lot of that right now. So uh, the indie market has always been big in horror. I think they've been good friends, right? When you think of, like short indie films, there's almost always horrors being involved, and I think horror can work fantastically as low budget. In fact, there's even some expectations for certain subgenres of horror in film for some of that low budget feel, right? That's just cheap masks and fake blood and all that, among other things. But um, I uh, I want there to be more experimentation in literature and in film. I think it's more important now in the age of artificial intelligence. Um, I think. I think experimentation is very human. Going out of the norm is great. Breaking the mold. I want to see more of that. Um, and so you look at the big five publishers right now, and you can see a lot of trends. People are riding to the market. They're wanting. There's a lot of safety in what's being published. Something
Mhm.
that they feel can is going to earn the money back. And I think in indie publishing, you got these small presses, and then of course self-published authors. um, they are willing to experiment. They're willing to take those risks, and I think the reward is there. Maybe not so much for the indie artists just yet, but I think the reward is really there for the readers, and I think
Mhm.
the reward is obviously very much there right now in the film industry for both viewers and for the indie crews. Backrooms, Obsession. What was the one that the YouTube? What was his name? Markiplier. Gosh, I can't think of the name of it. He just released a film. A YouTuber released a horror film here just a couple months back, and I can't believe the name of the film is lost me here.
It'll come to you after we
I'm sure.
get done talking. I love the way you put that, though. I love your answer, and you couldn't have said it any better. I wholeheartedly agree. I understand why uh, traditional publishing makes safe choices, but that's even further why I appreciate indie publishers because they have the freedom necessarily, or maybe not, but they're they have the courage to take the risk because you're already taking a risk on yourself when you're doing it indie anyways. And
Right.
so when you take those risks and are experimental to me that's where these fresh ideas are born and stuff. So yeah, I love everything about that. So this is a question that I ask everybody. What is something that brings you joy right now?
Something to bring me joy right now, apart from my wife and my cats, my one cat Amadeus here has just been hounding me all day, and he's still here. Uh,
He's like, you're ignoring me. Let me remind you that
yeah,
I'm here right now.
for sure. Baseball. I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and it's been a surprisingly fun team to watch this year. But as a writer, I had the most wonderful thing happen a few weeks back. Um, so I know you have I believe you have an audiobook produced for your work, correct?
hmm
Uh, did you go through ACX or
No, it
Audible?
was I found her myself and self-funded it because I just loved her voice, so it was just a independent thing.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I found the narrator through ACX, which is Audible's it's under the Audible umbrella anyway. It's just their production company. Um but I had when you go through ACX and you do Audible as an exclusive for your audiobooks, you can get the higher royalty option. They'll give you 50 promo codes, so you can you have 25 for the US and 25 for the UK, and then you can send those out so people can get a free audio copy of your work, hopefully to review it. And I've had a heck of a time getting some of these codes moved to people who are actually
Yeah.
listening to them, right? Redeeming them. But I had recently got most of the UK codes out, and I woke up the other day to an email from a UK listener who was praising specifically the second story in The Wishing Well, The Substitute. He loved it. He loved the fairy tale rhyming structure of the child's break in reality, and it just reading the email, waking up to that, it put such a smile on my face. I mean, I printed out the email as my first fan mail. I mean, I don't know if you want to call it fan mail, but I'm going
Yeah.
to call it fan mail. And I've thought about it like every day since I got it. I mean, it's just been that's been a great joy as a writer.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely a special thing to see when the reader resonates with what you wrote, and it makes if you ever happen to come across a bad review, it makes those obsolete because you know that your audience is there. So, that's amazing that you were able to see that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. As a reader, I did go to StokerCon, which is more for, it's a writers conference, but also an award ceremony for horror literature. Uh, but as a reader, I was able to walk away with a couple handfuls of advanced reader copies of some books that are going to be coming out here through October of this year. So I've been trying to get through some of those while also still focusing on my own writing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much like, all-consuming being a reader and a writer. You have to kinda, like, pick which which one you wanna exist in at any given time.
For sure.
So, where can people find you and your stories? Where are you most active on social media, and where can they find your books?
Yeah. I'm first going to give you a heads up as far as social media goes that I don't find any joy in social media. You ask about what brings me joy, it's not social media.
Yeah.
To be honest with you there. I spent probably 10 or 11 years only having a Reddit account. And then when I got into publishing here, the Wishing Well, I had to get some author accounts put together. And so I'm still learning it. But I am on Instagram, and I'm probably more active on Instagram, I think, than any of the other stuff. But that's Christopher underscore Ruiz underscore author. But as far as the book goes, the Wishing Well can be ordered through any bookseller, really anyone who orders from Ingram. So like
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble, or most indie bookshops that aren't specifically like used bookstores, but those that actually place orders. Um, I have a handful of signed editions still available on my website, and that can be found at christopher-ruiz.com. And then, of course, it's available in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle formats on Amazon. It's in Kindle Unlimited. It's on Audible. We talked about audiobooks and stuff. But um, I think right now there's some kind of sale or something going on. But I think the Audible book, at least as of the time of this recording, is sitting at about $5. Um, I'm not sure. Audible sets the price. I have no influence on the price of the audiobook. But I can tell you that the narrator, Darren Elliker, he's like a 30-year audio vet. He's an award winner. He's been in radio and done all kinds of audio, but the guy's great.
Oh, wow.
And he did the narration for the Wishing Well, and he did it wonderfully. And he's we talked about having a big cast, a lot of characters. He's a big cast in a single voice.
I love
So
that.
you're an audiobook person, at least jump onto Audible and check out the preview. It's like the first 5 minutes of the first story.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So, wide distribution, multiple formats. And I've been reminding everybody if there is an indie bookstore that you would like to purchase it from, you can do so through bookshop.org and they will send it there. But it sounds like it is available in so many places. So,
Yeah. And if you are in the Springfield, Illinois area or Central Illinois, there is a brand new indie bookstore that just opened up here in in Illinois' capital. I believe it's called. They just opened today. Well, my wife got me a business card from them. So, uh, Elderberry and Plum Bookstore. So check it out if you're in the area. If you ever come through the capital of Illinois.
very nice.
Yeah, we got to
Well,
support each other. Small, the bookish community is it's got to be a supportive one.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining, Chris. I had a blast talking to you. Thank you for your service.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I sincerely appreciate this opportunity, and I'm glad to have met you.
Yeah, same to you.